Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors. Dr. Allen chats with successful investors exploring their journey from setback to triumph. Through this window, we glimpse the truths that inspire our guests to invest abundantly and flourish in all areas of life. And now your host, Dr. Allen.
Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, where we delve deep into the lives of our successful guests to learn the secrets of thriving to flourish abundantly in all areas of life. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. Today's guest is a practicing periodontist. Following his periodontics education, he served in the U.S. Navy, where he was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps' Commendation Medal for meritorious service. He authored the book, Everything You Need to Know About Dental Surgery, a guide to safe, successful periodontal and implant surgery from the experts. In his spare time, he invests in real estate. Welcome to the show, Brian Evans. Welcome to the show, Brian. Thank you for being with us today. I'm looking forward to getting to know who the real Brian Evans is. So let's start. I like to start because I think to really get to know people, we have to know the child within. And so let's step back to your childhood. And if you could share with us a time as you look back on it that you consider to be one of the more formative experiences of your childhood, adolescence, maybe even your early adulthood.
Wow, that's a good question. And first of all, Alan, thanks for inviting me, having me on your show. And as we were just briefly discussing before we came on, I really value these interactions and getting different people. I seem to take something from each of these interactions and move forward with my positive direction. So again, thanks for having me. What a great loaded question to begin with. I grew up as one of three kids to my parents in Arkansas. And my mother had me when she was 6 years old. I was the oldest of my other two siblings. And hard. My father was 20. And so they were kids having kids. And my wife and I had our first child when I was 35, and I look back and realized that at the age of 21, my mom had 3 kids. My parents had 3 kids.
Wow.
To feed, to try to raise, and all during that time, I look back at my years when I was in my 20s, early 20s, and early 30s for that matter, and I was still growing up. Mm-hmm. And changing and evolving. And so to be a product and to see how successful my other two siblings are all these years later, my parents have remained together through all the good and many, many bad times early on. I'm extremely proud of them and where I came from. Mm-hmm. They always provided for us. Looking back as a kid, you don't appreciate the sacrifices that your parents can make for their kids, but we see that, and then fortunately in hindsight, and I think it requires experience in life of your own before you can really appreciate what your parents do for you. Right. So I give them a lot of credit. And so I think that growing up and having a hard experience initially with just whether it be money and having the things that we want or the place that we wanted to live, it formed me and made me realize, hard work does pay off, and you do the right thing. You try to do the right thing by people. Good things are going to happen to you. So it really did shape me.
That is quite a beginning there. And I'm sure your parents had to struggle throughout those early years of your life. I'm surprised you're from Arkansas. You do not sound like you're from the South.
I hear that all the time.
Did you grow?
You let me. Hopefully, when we're back to some more normalcy after COVID here and we're traveling, as soon as I touch foot on Arkansas soil, that twang comes out.
Does it really? So you had to learn to talk like a New Englander, huh? Although you don't
Well,
really sound like a New Englander either.
I get asked that all the time by my patients when they say, you know, where I see on your bio you're from Arkansas. You don't talk like you're from Arkansas. And I think that a real quick funny story is I went to Lyon College, as you said there in the bio. It's actually a little small liberal arts school in Batesville, Arkansas. And it's actually quite a diversity of students from all over the country, actually. And so after my first semester, I didn't have a car at that time. And I remember my parents picking me up after the testing and everything was over, and we get a little break. And we're just having a conversation. And both of my parents said, "Why are you talking that way? Talking funny." And so I think it's, you know, you're around other students from other parts of the country, and you just sort of, maybe catch on to their speaking and the way they speak more so than what you came from. So.
Well, you came a long ways from your roots. How is it that you actually ended up going into the health care field, and particularly choosing the dental field, but not just becoming a dentist, but also becoming a periodontist and going into the surgery end of all of that?
Yeah, I went to school, chose a college, actually, the Lyon College, mainly because of the outstanding academics and success rate in having their graduate students go into graduate schools and being accepted. So that was a huge part of my decision to go to a smaller school outside of maybe a larger school that many of my friends from my hometown would go to, like the University of Arkansas. So I always had a mindset of, I'm going to graduate school. You know, I had this determination from the beginning. I was the first kid to go, first individual from my entire family to go to college. So I always had focus and direction. And I worked with my father. He's an electrician, and I did have the opportunity to work with him during summers, and many of his jobs were in hospitals or in nursing homes. And I really sort of gravitated toward the health profession side of things, I think, from those experiences, particularly being in the hospitals. And initially I thought I wanted to be a physician. And so when I went to Lyon, I decided I was going to be a pre-med major right away. Did pretty well with my studies, and Lyon offered an externship to go out and just, shadow dentists. I knew what a dentist was, what they did, but I didn't know all the nuances about it. But as I spent some time with this dentist here locally at the college, I realized, hey, I like this lifestyle. He's taking care of people. He makes a pretty good income. He runs his own business. He has a lot of autonomy. And quite frankly, at that time, we had pagers and beepers. He wasn't tied to one of those. And I would see, in the hospital, these physicians constantly having paged and beeped and they're on call. So I kind of like that lifestyle. I've always been pretty decent with my hands and coordination. And so I thought it was a good fit. So that led me to dentistry. And then I did get accepted, went to the LSU School of Dentistry in New Orleans. And then I didn't know what a periodontist was, even when I started dental school. I just knew, hey, I'm in dental school, I'm going to be a dentist. And as I'm there, I'm realizing there are all these specialties in the field: orthodontics, braces. There's, endodontists who specialize in root canals. I really became more interested in the surgical side of things in dentistry, and that leaves oral surgery or periodontics. And I chose periodontics because I had a great mentor there at LSU, who was a program director, Ray Yuckna, and I spent a lot of time with the graduate students, and just found that was a good fit for me. And so that led me to do the residency, and I was fortunate to just stay there. and continue my training under Dr. Yakna. It was a great decision because I was familiar with the school. And again, my wife is actually, and I ended up marrying a physician, which is kind of ironic. But you know, a big piece of my wife and I's story, which is a whole nother thing, we ended up trying to match together in the same location for our respective residencies, which is not the easiest thing to do.
I don't imagine.
And I, to complicate matters, I signed up with the Navy. So had a lot of strings that were pulling me in different ways, and a lot of things had to fall in place. But fortunately, it happened where my wife and I were able to stay, and I met her down in New Orleans while she was in medical school. I was in dental school. And we were very fortunate to sort of have everything come together where we could continue our residencies there and spend more time in the same place.
Well, it's interesting to me that you had said that you had always had your eye on grad school. First generation students oftentimes don't, they really don't have much clue about the college experience to start with. Many of them don't really have a clue as to what's the difference between a graduate degree and an undergraduate degree. And yet you had your eye on a graduate degree even before you entered college. Where did you get all of that that knowledge, that understanding about the higher education system and institutions?
You know, I think that was one of the things that my parents always preached to us. Education will take you a long way. And, you know, I think that started early on. And so that was the impetus for me to, you know, look into, okay, when I had that time with working with my father and being in a hospital and seeing what physicians do, you know, I looked right away. What do you have to do to become that? You know, what are the steps involved? And that's when I found out, okay, well, you got to go to college, then you got to go to med school, then you got to do a residency. And so quite early on, I knew that was going to be a significant commitment in time and training to get where I wanted to be. But I realized that early on. And I think, it was that focus and that drive that what's going to make me better? What's going to get me to a point in life of success that I want, and be able to, again, not that my parents didn't do everything for us, but I wanted to be better. I wanted to have more opportunities, and they wanted the same for me. So that, you know, that started early on in investigating what I needed to do.
Well, that is interesting. I mean, because just a 4-year degree seems insurmountable to a lot of first-year students who just don't have family members who've been through that process, and it just seems overwhelming. And yet you knew what you were getting into. You knew you were in there for essentially a 12-year commitment before you even got to the point of having any kind of financial return on that investment, and certainly on that emotional and psychological commitment there. So that took a lot of fortitude. It took a lot of understanding. It took a lot of commitment from an 18-year-old. So, yeah, I mean, you must have had some parents who were committed to that process as well, even though they themselves had not gone through it. They certainly must have been committed to you to going through that process there. Well, you had to make a lot of decisions along the way, and you had talked a little bit about the different strings that were pulling you in different directions. The desire to have the residency where you and your wife could stay together, and then you also had the strings pulling you towards the military, which you actually ultimately did go into. How did all that work out?
that was a phenomenal experience. I would do it all over again, even though it required living apart from my wife for 3 years.
Mm.
And and also everything, all the stress involved and the anxiety of being able to match and sort of stay in the same place there in New Orleans with my wife for at least 3 years before we had to separate. And so just to backpedal there a little bit, why did I choose the service? After first year of dental school, or actually during your first year of dental school, most of the service branches will present some of the rationale for why you might want to serve active duty and be a dentist. And one of the, or two of the things that really pulled me in that direction were, number one, they help pay for school. Mm-hmm. And again, I also had the motivation to not go into a tremendous amount of debt to gain my education. Mm-hmm. And that was from the beginning. I was fortunate with the undergraduate degree, a combination of an academic and golf scholarship. I practically went through my undergrad relatively debt-free. And then looking at, how much it was going to be for at least just the 4 years of dental school, to see how much, if I just took out loans, what my debt was going to be, was overwhelming. So having an opportunity to have that paid for, and also have the experience of traveling abroad, and nothing was tying me down at the time. I was a single guy just focused on getting my dental degree. Hey, I got a chance to see the world, and the Navy's going to help me get through school debt free, and then it's a 3-year obligation. And then after that, I'm still young, then I'll move on with my life. And so that's why I chose it. And most of my dental classmates kind of looked down upon joining. They said, "Oh, you're gonna make so much more money if you get out of, right after dental school, you'll be able to pay that debt back relatively quickly." And I just didn't see it that way. And again, ironically, 6 months after signing up for the Navy, I met my now wife, which very much complicated things because she was not interested in pursuing a naval duty. So fast forward through dental school, again, the Navy helped pay for my school through what was called a health profession scholarship program. So for every year that they paid your tuition, your books, gave you a living stipend, you gave them a year of active duty service. And that's sort of, at that time, that was the arrangement. Well, as I was reaching to the point of graduating from dental school, and that's when I got interested in periodontics and wanted to do the residency. Well, I went ahead and applied, but I had to get what's called a deferment from the military obligation of service in order to do my residency. So I actually was accepted into a couple of periodontal programs, and still wasn't sure, once accepted, whether I was going to be able to pursue that training, because I had to wait on the Navy to say it was okay. They could have said, "No, you know what, you're going to graduate dental school and you're going to come in, we need a general dentist. You'll have to delay your training." So between that, so I was into 2 residency programs. My wife was trying at the time to match in a medical residency in the same location. So we only had a couple of locations where we might be able to train in the same place. Really, New Orleans being the most likely one that would work for us. So again, everything worked out where the Navy was able to grant me the deferment, and that was purely based on numbers. They project, okay, well, once this guy finishes up his training, will we need a periodontist in the Navy at that time? And so the numbers worked out. So they gave me the deferment. So I was able to do the program at LSU, and then we had to make sure that my wife was going to match, which was after that deferment news, to make sure we were going to be at the same place. And so that worked out. So that's when I was saying everything sort of fell into place. It really did. My wife and I got married the day before we both graduated medical and dental school.
Hmm.
She grew up in Connecticut. One of the reasons why I'm here, but not the main reason. And when we got engaged and decided to get married, having my family in Arkansas and her family in Connecticut, we thought, what better way to just have the wedding in New Orleans, right outside of New Orleans, because all family members are going to be there for our graduation. So let's just do everything in one shot.
Do it all at once. Huh?
That was a busy weekend.
I'll bet it was.
Yeah.
Well, very interesting story there. We are coming to the end of our time, and it's been delightful being with you. Before we close here, I have another question here, but just take a moment here to tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Well, sure. I can easily be reached by email at drbrianevans@gmail.com. You can call me. I have a periodontal office here in Hamden, Connecticut. My number can be reached there, 203-288-5916. My website there is www.hamdenperio.com.
Well, what I'd like to get into just a little bit here is, since this is a show for real estate investors, how did you find your way into real estate investing, and what kind of investing is it that you are actually involved in?
So it really started with purchase of a single family home in Arkansas. Actually, my wife and I were able to purchase a home and move my parents to that home, which is in a more a part of the Rogers, Arkansas, up in the northwest part of the state, where there were more opportunities for my sister and her daughters to get a better education, and we wanted my mother to be able to retire from her job and also just kind of enjoy life. So we ended up buying a single family home up in northwest Arkansas and moved my family there about 2 or 3 years ago. And that was probably the best thing that my wife and I have ever done with any investments. It put them in just a better place. And it was sort of returning, all the things that they did for me, as we said, I talked about at the beginning of this podcast. That's the most rewarding thing that my wife and I have done in our lives together. And it keeps rewarding us daily to see how my family is flourishing there. But that also got us interested into that market real estate wise, because that's a booming area. And it was our experience in trying to find a single family home. They would go up for sale, and within a few days, the listing was taken off the market because it's that hot.
Yeah.
So with the university there, my wife and I started looking at ways of passive income. She's a physician, I'm a periodontist. If we're going to make income, we have to be at our offices and doing work. So
Absolutely.
we learned more about passive income as a way to, work toward retirement with a diversity of our portfolio. And so we started looking at single family homes around the college area to potentially start that process. And it was not easy. And reading more and more about being a landlord, distant, being in Connecticut and owning property. It's one thing to have your family living in a property that you own, but another to have a tenant that you're trying to fix a toilet, 100 miles, thousands of miles away. So we then found out a little bit more from my friend Jeff, kind of shared with me his information about his experience investing in syndications, apartment syndications, and got me interested. And so I started reading more about it and thought this was a better lane for my wife and I with respect to real estate investing passively through these syndications, because it takes a lot of the headaches outside of being a direct landlord, but you still get a lot of the benefits of being part of a real estate deal. So I have done since that time. That was, we bought the house in Arkansas a little over 3 years ago, and passive income through these syndications started about 2 years ago with Joe Fairless. He's Ashcroft Capital. They're one of the larger kind of multi-syndication apartment groups, and we've been very happy with that, and have since done 4 deals, and looking to continue that. So that's been really good.
Very good. Well, good. Well, it has been a delight, Brian, to have you on the show today. Enjoyed you sharing your story with us, and I hope in the future we can come back together and continue the conversation here. So thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Alan. Much appreciated.
Thank you for tuning in to Creekside Chats with Successful Multifamily Real Estate Investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital works with both new and established investors nationwide, creating opportunities to flourish in all areas of life. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures great and small flourish abundantly. For resources to enhance your well-being through multifamily real estate investment, connect with us online at capital.steedtalker.com.